It is the part 2 of a video where I'm going to make an attempt to make a wooden club. So come with me on this wonderful journey, a first for the channel, where we're actually making a piece of historical kit and a historical weapon, in this case a wooden club. So here we are, we're now back in my lovely garden, and I have a piece of wood in which I am attempting to make a club out of. And I'm sure you agree, it's very heavy. I can just about lift it with my arm, and it's got a lot of material to come off to end up eventually looking something like this. So I'm sure you agree, it's going to be, originally I thought this would be maybe a 3-part video, but it may be anywhere between a 4 and a 10-part video. But I hope you're going to enjoy this journey. And at the moment I'm suffering from an authentic injury. As I was putting on Anglo-Saxons bolt, his buckle is fastened on with 2 nails and a bit of the nail sticking out and cut my hand. And the other thing I'm suffering from is that I find it difficult to grip for long, as I'm getting old in life and my hands aren't as good as they used to be. But come with me with this marvellous journey, a first for the channel, as we never really ventured massively into crafting. And there's a couple of reasons for that. A, because I don't really have the confidence to do crafting videos, because I've not practiced making things for a long time. As you know, I've got an awful lot of kit, I don't really need much more kit. But it's always something I've always thought about, and certainly back in the day, some of my old friends who are no longer with us, including Eggle, did try to encourage me to do this and go down this journey. So today what we're going to try to do is make this section here a bit weaker, so eventually we can have it shorter, because it definitely needs to come down in length by at least 4 to 6 inches. So we're going to attempt that, and just in case I start bleeding, I've got a authentic linen patch to put on my hand in case I do start bleeding, but I don't think I will do. So I'm going to just try to take off meat of the wood I don't want. I'm using my eyesight and understanding what's inside of it, so I can see the club inside within my mind. So let's turn it over. I'm going to attempt. Of course, you've got to be very careful when you're using an axe, because the one thing you don't want is to chop it into your leg, because that will mean me phoning an ambulance and going to can't say it, them going to accident and emergency, which I don't want. You know, they'll say, well, what have you done? Oh, I was making a Viking age wooden club and I chopped my leg with an axe. Because it's easy to slide down, so if you're going for really mad blows, that's when you can do yourself an injury. So when you use an axe, always try to control it. Don't have your leg in a direct line. So my legs are far away, so I can swing round. In fact, I'm going to take this axe off. It's slightly getting in the way, and we're going to attempt to take some of the meat of the end, which we don't want. And then we can also see, because it's got a crack in it there, now I can see this crack goes in about 4 or 5 inches, so it will end around this knotted area here. So if it was cracked all the way up, then that would be a problem. And then we do have cracking here, but I don't think that's going to be the deepest of cracks, and I think it would be manageable to take away a lot of that material and end up with something pretty solid. And so far I've really enjoyed working on this. So in this instance I'm just making little cuts into it to weaken the wood, so that when my axe digs in a bit harder, it will bite and take off more of the material. Oh yes, this could be a start of something. You know, in 10 years time I could be making a long ship, but you never know, do you? Of course you need the wood and the material in order to make one of them. And I love actually to go and volunteer for a while at the shipbuilding museum in Scandinavia. and actually learn to actually use these tools authentically and have more experience with that. So that section there is very soft, it's a little bit rotten. Of course, the other thing you've got to watch out for is not smacking your thumb and taking your thumbs off. So always be careful. It's better to take your time and make it over 5 or 6 hours than rush it and hurt yourself in the process. I'm sure you'll agree, because I quite like my fingers and I quite like my leg the way it is. Again, it's all about controlling the blows and knowing what you're going for. In fact, I'm just going to readjust this log this way, I think, try to get it in the right place without it bouncing around too much. So let's continue. Again, I'm just biting into it and I'm working my way up, rather than just trying to go for big blows. That will help to weaken the wood and make it easier for me to work. And this is a skill that goes back way back in time, way back to the Iron Age and the Bronze Age. Of course, in the Bronze Age you wouldn't have iron axes, you'd have an axe of bronze, of course, and never really owned one of them. I'd love to own a bronze axe, because if anybody makes bronze axes and would love to send me one, then I'm definitely up for reviewing it on the channel. I think last year I was talking to a guy in America, I can't quite remember his name, and we was emailing each other, and he was making a pattern welded Anglo-Saxons sea axe, which he said he was going to send me, but we kind of not talked for a while, life just got in the way. So if you still want to send me those items, I'll definitely give you a good big shout out, and I'll definitely use them on the channel for educational purposes, to display and talk about pattern welded Anglo-Saxons and sea axes, because I don't own a pattern welded sea axe or a pattern welded Anglo-Sax, and I just don't really have the spare capital at the moment to say, oh, let's go and buy one. So let's try to deal with this knot. You can definitely tell this knot is tough, very tough indeed. This is all about getting to the point where I can get this on a wood horse. So towards the end of the series we'll be getting my wood horse out, then I can find it in my garage and hopefully it's okay and the legs are okay, and I'll get this on a wood horse and then start using a draw knife, because that will not only take away a lot of material, it'll also give a very, very fine and good finish. Although yes, you don't need to use a wood horse. If you don't own one as a Saxon or a Viking, then you just use an axe. Of course, a club could be used around your farmhouse. You could certainly knock things in, or if you've got a chisel, you could use it to knock the end of your chisel. So it's a very diverse weapon, but also a very diverse tool. Oh, I missed there, I missed again. So never be afraid to reposition your log, get it in a good place. In that case, I've dropped it. Of course, that could do you a lot of injury if you drop this on your foot, so be careful. So I hope you've enjoyed the recent videos I've been making. I do have quite a few long format videos to drop it again to publish, and whenever I come out and do some filming, I try to get at least 2 or 3 long format videos for the future, because we definitely need more of them on the channel. And I also recorded a little bit of time earlier where I didn't talk when I was doing this, just for some B-roll footage, because you can never have enough B-roll footage. In fact, I do have another channel, I think it's called Viking B-roll, where I am going to put a lot of B-roll footage on of what we do so that people can use it for the videos. So I'm trying to reduce this down as much as possible because I don't want this end, and you can still see where the wood is fresh, where it's been weathered, where I've not chopped into it yet. I'm hoping that this crack here isn't going to go too deep into the wood. From my experience, as I've done a lot of woodworking over the years, I know that this crack here will go, and underneath is the really tough heartwood. And I could have put this inside for the winter, but I left it outside. I was very naughty to do that, really, but it's not done it any harm. And I am quite amazed, because I thought the other day when I first looked at it, I thought, well, it's not going to be any good. But I think within this club, this wood, there is a good club. Of course, it's still massively too thick for my hand, so I'm trying to get it down to that size, which is about an inch and a half, maybe inch and a quarter. So you're looking around about 40 millimeters, 4 centimeters in diameter. Of course, this one is made out of ash, and this one is about 25 years old, and it's been well looked after. I use a bit of linseed now and again just to put it on the wood, to give the wood a bit of a chance to breathe and to oil up. And I won't publish these videos until I've at least finished the club and finished the series. So again, we're going to go back to this knot so I can keep attacking and striking the same place to get more of the meat off, which is what I'm doing at the moment. And luckily, now that I'm using the axe a bit, my hand's not too bad. My dad had the same problem where over time his hands tightened up. But what you may not know about me, or you may know, is that I used to be an engineer. So I've done a lot of hammering over the years, and I did have a working blacksmith workshop, which I've still got, but at some point I'm going to try to bring it all down here so that we can introduce blacksmithing onto the channel and explore that journey as I get back into that hobby as well. But like a lot of things, I'm self-taught, so I've never done a blacksmithing course. I did do a little bit at college, if I remember. They had a forge and they did teach us for a while. We did like we made a knife and an axe. We made horseshoes, because at one point I was thinking about becoming a farrier, but I never had the time, the capital to get into that job, and now I'm just really too old to do that sort of a job. And you've got to appreciate and love the art of farrying. But of course, in farrying these days, a lot of the horseshoes are ready made, and all they're doing is heating them up on their little forge to shape it for the horse's hoof. But some farriers do actually make their own horseshoes still, and I do believe there's a vast amount of different type of horseshoes you could have. Sometimes it's for medical reasons, like if you got a horse with an affected hoof, you may want to have a plate on the foot for a while to give it a chance to heal. And it's and I'm sure there's no doubt there's lots of channels out there which talk about farrying and demonstrate it, and I urge you to check them out. See, that's some good material coming off there, and eventually it will come down in length. It's just time. Again, we've got a bit of softwood there, slightly rotten, so that's got to go. And then at some point I've got to think about if I want the handle to be straight or I want the handle to be curved. This one's a straight handle. I will probably make this slightly concave to go along with the grain of the wood, and then we'll probably think about staining it, possibly if we can find an authentic manner to stain it in. But it does make you think what they would treat the wood with. Of course, in the modern world we like to use linseed oil, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. You need to have raw linseed oil and not boiled and not treated. that's the best linseed oil for wood. So again, we're going to go back to this section. And the more I use my hand, the better my hand gets. And definitely the other day when I was resting in my house after I did 20 minutes of this, I could definitely feel my arms have been worked, because it's a good natural way to build muscle as well. Now, if you get an axe and you get it stuck, the best way to get it out is to give it a bit of a jerk down. You don't want to jerk it up because it will bring the log with you. If you try to struggle with it, you're going to struggle. And then whilst I'm here, one thing we're going to do is just get this axe. We're going to just knock the axe slightly back on. And then that's a good sign. And another thing you can do is just give it a whack on the side that will secure it in place. Because I don't have anything inside at the end of the wood, like a V section to keep it in. It's naturally held by the fact that it's just a very tight fit. And again, this would have been an old handle which I've converted from another axe and used on my wood horse to give it a good fit at the end. Because what you don't want a loose axe. Of course, if I had more cameras, we could do multi-shots. But at the moment, I'm only filming. The only camera I've got available is a mobile phone. I don't have any memory cards to use my one decent digital camera. So at some point I need to invest again and buy, or look in my house for a digital memory card. I think I've misplaced them. So if you're going for big strikes, just be careful. Make sure you do hit the target and you don't run off and smack it into your leg. The last thing I want is to encourage people to get into a craft and hurt themselves. So if you're using an axe and your leg is there, here, that's dangerous, because one miss, if I'm going too heavy in, I can't control the axe blow, I'm going to cut into my leg. As I said, I like my legs the way they are. So I'm trying to deal with this knot. So in this case, it's just about repeating the blow. And you have to also look at the way you're blowing it, where you're trying to get your blows in. I could do it like this and look at the camera, but that's just potentially very dangerous. And you can tell that's a very tough knot, but it is coming down. And of course, the more material I remove, the lighter this log will be, and then the easier it's going to be. And you can see I'm getting a point. If you was making a stake for the ground, and then certainly using an axe will get you a sharp point. And you can definitely tell at the section where it's a little bit rotten from being outside. So, and also be careful not to drop your axe on your foot. So I love it when you get big chunks off. And I'm really enjoying getting back into filming at the moment. I do love it when I get these wonderful comments that say, you know, oh, I'm from Denmark and I really love your comments. We have one of these today where I put a video from the great and wonderful Tirkir Thorkelson, and we had a guy who must live in the Frisia area of Germany, and he said, oh, you know, I'm from this part of Frisia, Germany, and I love your content. I was born there, and I think that's pretty amazing. And I did send, this is a bit of a shout out to anybody that knows Tirkir in real life. His name is Graham. Hello Graham, hope you're doing well, my friend. I know when I spoke to him last in Christmas time, he was suffering with a bad foot and struggling to walk. So I hope you're getting better, mate, and you're getting some solution to your foot problem. But if anybody does know him, please do say hello. I did text him last Wednesday, which is what, 5-6 days ago, and so far I've not had a reply. And I know why. I think he's probably annoyed with me because of some of these Keir Starmer videos I made at the beginning of this year, and I only made those really to grow the channel. I mean, politics is not something we do a lot of on this channel, but some days I just feel like if we don't stand up and speak our minds, we're not going to get a better world and a better place, and we're not going to get back to greatness in the UK. So that was one of the reasons why I made some of those videos, because I'm not a massive Keir Starmer fan. I'm fairly certain he's a decent bloke in real life, and you could probably have a good time having a beer with him. But it's hard to know when you don't know these people in actual life. And it's also, he's been in 10 months in power now, so it's also a little bit early to judge the Labour Party of what they're going to be like. But let's not go too in depth into that. So again, we're going to chop down. So we've got a nice bit of a feature coming through. You've got some lovely grainings in cherry wood, and I'm fairly certain we had cherries. We must have done from the Roman times. So I think it is a British tree. I'm fairly certain it is. But if you know other words, let me know. Right, at that point, I'm just going to check the camera, see how far we're in. I don't want to be on for half an hour boring you to death. Alright, 21 minutes. And of course I am using a more modern axe. This is one of my axes I used for the 19th century, and the reason why I'm using it is because it's a very good axe. It's got a good weight to it and it's super sharp at the moment, whereas I don't really have many authentic axes. And then I've had some interesting comments saying, well, your axe is upside down, and I quite like that thought. It's something I must think about and talk about. And it's certainly amazing some of the various types of axes. You could say this is probably a number D or number E, but I'm not overly certain, because in those back in the day I just bought an axe because I liked it, and I didn't really think about whether it was a 7th century axe or a 9th century axe. But as we grow and develop the channel, we will look into that. So this is the end of this video. So here we are, we're getting progress, we're getting some of the meat off, I'm sure you agree, and eventually it will be a wonderful club. So let's pose with the axe. In fact, we'll pose with this one for the thumbnail. It's goodbye from me. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of making a wooden club. Grass hail, good health to all those that watch. And if you're new to the channel, at the moment 64% of you are not subscribed, so please do go and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye from Blaggy. Oh yes, I'm going with my club to go and beat some Saxons, but my club is way too heavy and it will knock their brains in quite in a nice way.